All right, we're here outside of the Verizon 5G Performance Center, a.k.a. the Suns practice facility, a.k.a. where we just heard from Matt Ishbia and James Jones and Josh Bartelstein. The one moment of postseason clarity I think we're going to get from this Suns season. We're just going to talk for 10, 15 minutes here about what we just heard. We'll have an episode for everybody later, but let's just go chronologically. Matt Ishbia spoke for 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. James Jones, Josh Bartelstein spoke for 10 combined. Yeah. The obvious takeaway from Ishbia's comments were that word he kept saying, identity, mm-hmm. right? Like he wants to establish what the organization is really going to be about. And we'll do that first before we get into all the semantics of who's going to run things and everything else. It's what we've been asking to hear, right?
Yeah.
It is what I think Suns fans want to hear, which is for him to say, we're starting at 30,000 feet, not at the next move.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me from Matt Ishbia, if we're just like giving a letter grade, and then we'll dive deeper into it later tonight around everything we'd said, grab clips, all those sorts of things, is I thought Matt nailed it. I know there are some people that want a pound of flesh when it comes to Matt, but I never thought he was in there pulling the strings, and I think he made it pretty clear he's not pulling the strings, at least to my eyes.
Okay. We can get into that. I'll let you say your piece first.
We can debate that later. I think it did come to me that he is not scouting players. He's not trading for guys. Maybe he's a little bit more involved than he probably should have been. And I'm really happy. I was going to ask this question, but Kellen Olson stole it from me, thankfully, who would have been right in front of me and would have no chance to change my question. But the biggest thing that he had learned, and from his seasons before to where he is now and how he's going to change that, and it's what you had said, organizationally, top to bottom, what does it mean to be a Phoenix Sun? And I thought that was really big.
Yeah.
There were some moments that were a little murky towards the end that I wish we could have gotten a little bit more clarity on, but they kind of cut us off there for a little bit.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I thought it was pretty good on the accountability part, and that's what I wanted to hear. And even though he goes, I'm not doing that with the players, it's on me. And that's what I wanted to hear.
Well, the accountability is the other thing I definitely wanted to hit, because if you compare 12 months ago, the press conference that Ishbia gave, the accountability side was a 180. It's not even an individual lack of accountability, because I think he's always been pretty good about owning each and every part of everything that happens, but it was more so acting as if there maybe even wasn't something to take accountability for, right? It was like the 26-7 other teams want to be us, we're still all in, like almost what's the big deal here? And I don't think that sat well with the fan base. And so yes, there is a lot of questions still to be asked, and we have no idea what's coming the rest of the offseason. But what I do think we know is that Matt Ishbia, he's sitting with the disappointment. And he is telling us that even though, and we will and can debate like how much of it's really him and what exactly went wrong and what needs to be fixed and where do they go from here, like he, I feel like, is sounding to me like a guy who is finally learning the basketball stuff that he obviously didn't have before. And, like, I think there is something to be said, right? Like, if you buy the Wizards, no one pays a lick of attention to what you do for the first 3 years. You get to do whatever you want because you're irrelevant. You run a team that doesn't matter until maybe you turn it around. But Matt Ishbia took over a team that had been in the finals. The last owner was very high profile, in a bad way. There was a trade on the table for one of the best players to ever play basketball, and there were championship expectations. And so he had to learn those lessons in the spotlight. Now, there's not a complete grade on this. This offseason will tell us a lot, but step one here, chapter one of this offseason, you got to feel good that he is sounding like somebody who's humbling himself and I think taking some of those steps.
The humbleness as we kind of round out the Ishbia side of things, and of course we're gonna dive into it all night. What Ishbia just gave us was probably 2 or 3 days more content and clarity, but overall I thought it's on me, which I thought was the biggest thing, because if anyone should be taking the accountability, I do think it is Ishbia. He is leaned on some of these guys that maybe shouldn't have been there. And then, of course, that takes it over to the Bartelstein and James Jones side, which we'll get to in just a second. But overall, what you had said, I think, is the biggest thing. I think finally he learned a really harsh lesson. It's like getting grounded the entire summer because you didn't do your book report and you failed the 4th grade. You ultimately were grounded the entire summer, but the next year you do better and you figure it out. You learned a harsh lesson, but it was a harsh lesson nonetheless. So I appreciate that from Matt Ishbia, clarity, and it seemed like he was pissed off.
So James Jones Josh Bartelstein, it was interesting because one of the other things that Matt Ishbia said is that he kept saying change is coming. And one thing that was similar between this year's press conference, there's a loading truck that is very angry at a car and vice versa here as we are outside of the wonderful Grand Ambassador Hotel. Would do a quick ad spot here. Would really recommend Thea, the Mediterranean place at the top of this. I took my wife for our anniversary. You go at night when it's nice out in Phoenix. It's beautiful.
Is it a rooftop?
Great place, yeah.
They should have just done it up there, the presser.
Yeah, maybe if they win the championship, strike a better tone. I don't know if you do the losing season press conference there. But anyway, so the similarity, unfortunately, this year with what we just heard compared to last year is uncertainty about, like, almost jumping the gun on the talking, right? Where it's like James Jones, as far as we know, his contract is up in about 9-10 weeks, and yet he was still put into a position where he had to talk about running this team. And that is a weird place to be for him, I'm sure, unless there's more going on in terms of an extension or whatever that we don't know about. But I don't know if we can walk away from this feeling like we have a lot of clarity about who's going to be making decisions, or frankly, I think the next thing I would kind of go through in my head on that is, well, when you talk about vision and identity, what does that even mean when there's so much up for grabs? It's really just a word at that point.
Well, how are you going to have vision and identity if it's the same people running the teams? If it's the same 2 guys? And
how could it possibly be different
I'm going to be honest,
than what it's been, right?
I'm going to be honest with you, with something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, which, listen, just going to be honest with ourselves. I didn't like that they did both guys together. I don't know if that's normal. I don't know if that's normally what they do. But I would have liked to see guys face the music alone, Bartelstein and James Jones, both doing things separately. But I don't know, like, after the season, I was like 100% sure we were going to get shakeup right away, at least with James Jones. Or whether it was with James Jones or whether it was with Josh Bartelstein. If you had to ask me now, I think both guys are staying.
Yeah.
Or at least going to be with the organization going forward, and I'm not too sure how much I feel about that.
I agree. I mean, even just the fact of them speaking today, right? If it was heading toward parting of ways, then why would they be speaking on behalf of the organization today? I mean, that would just be a weird call, regardless of anything else. Like, Matt Ishbia could have gone by himself if there was uncertainty about those guys, right? Like, you can still have this time, which we obviously spent yesterday's episode at the end kind of talking about why it's important for people to answer for kind of the things that happen with the season. But if it's them, then that tells me the organization, mostly Ishbia, thinks that there's still people who represent the organization. I mean, like that's the most basic way I can put it. So yeah, I don't know, and Ishbia kind of set the precedent from the beginning of the whole thing, saying like they weren't really going to talk about much of individual player moves and anything like that. So, you know, anyone expecting them to say when the meeting with Rich Kleiman is scheduled for, like, we didn't exactly get that, or, you know, if Bradley Beal's going to waive his no trade clause, like that wasn't what this was about. So it's nice to hear the right things. Again, this isn't even chapter 1 of the offseason. This is like the prologue, right? This is like, or even like that page at the beginning where it's like, to my loving wife. It's like that page. It's not even really getting into the book yet, but I think you have to feel good, and now it's time to, you know, and Ishbia said this, right? Like, actually act on what they're saying rather than just kind of expect that the fan base will believe it.
The one thing I'll say is it's on me. I should have asked this question, but I felt like someone was going to ask it. So, you know, I'll take accountability for that, for not doing this. But the Athletic article that came out and was alluding to maybe Bartelstein was doing a little bit more than just making MasterCard deals.
Yeah, but he was open about that. I don't think they hide from that.
Matt
has said Josh is in those rooms. Josh said I'm carrying out the vision. I mean, I don't think that was a secret, you know.
That's something that rubbed me the wrong way, because then if that's the case, there needs to be a pound of flesh to pay for at least both those guys in some respect, whether it's a mutual parting of ways or moving around in the front office. Those were kind of the lowlights for me. In terms of Ishbia, I thought it was great. I'm left with more questions than answers. It felt like a lot of things were really open-ended between James and
100%.
Bartelstein. For that to be the case, I'm just like, why'd you even go up there?
Agreed. I wanted to ask, but it felt I couldn't come up with a way to ask it.
They
that
did
wasn't,
it quick too. Just to be
fair.
They were trying to get them out.
I didn't even ask them a question. I asked Matt a question, but I would have liked to. I couldn't come up with a way that didn't feel confrontational. But I wanted to say, how do you guys feel about appearing right now? You know what I mean? Like the idea of coming out here with your future's uncertain, but it felt like a little bit, ruffling feathers. And
you can't do that. Just so we're clear, like when people get upset, like there is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but there is a certain way you go about these things. Doing it in front of everyone, not the place. Get them to the side, maybe ask that question, sure, but you're not trying to make something hostile.
The other thing is, to elaborate just while we're on it, because we're right after we just were there, like it's also a little bit calling out the PR strategy. These are people that 100%. I work with closely, because it's saying, you guys put these people out here, why would your whole organization handle this whole thing? It's just like, who the hell am I to do that at the end of the day? I can have an opinion about it, but to like confront them like that, it's just, well, again, like you said, it's a question that is interesting to hear the answer to, and there's also a lot of other things to find out about. Oops, I think I might have turned myself off.
No, you're still good. It's still going right there. In fact, you just turned on the backup recording, so now we have
we got 2 copies of it.
For everything.
Not used to holding this. I'm used to the clip.
Yeah.
But, any final thoughts? I think like we'll have an episode, of course, as 100%. I said, but a lot of uncertainty, I think, is the exact way that I would put it, and I guess it didn't close the door on what a lot of people, what we've been talking about. There could be a third person at a table like that in the not too distant future that maybe is at their level or above them. I don't feel like that's off the table, even if they stay, and from everything we heard today.
Do you have, just quickly, a highlight, just when people say high, low on your day, was there a low of something that was said during today's thing? You're like, what the hell does that mean? Or something else? Because like a high, something you're like, oh, I appreciate that. Or did you already obviously hit on it with Ishbia?
Yeah, I don't think there was anything. Like you said, it was so general that it's hard to really like nail anything really good or really bad, personally. But I think the main takeaway I'm going to walk away with is that Ishbia is striking a different tune than he has, and at least I think realizing the importance of getting it all to cohere and make sense together, rather than just attacking one move at a time and trying to go all out, coach, trade, this, that, this, and then none of it fits. I think that's what you got to feel the best about.
Trying not to microwave success. I would agree with you. I appreciate the accountability, but obviously we'll have more on it later.